Well, thanks for being here on the Holy Rose podcast. It's just so good to see you and to hear your voice and your laughter. It just brings me back to 0016. 0016. Was that the room? Mm-hmm. Oh, such a great place. And good, bad, and ugly in that room, I feel like.
Yeah, we're constantly having to, just for all listeners who don't know what it's like to learn about Jesus and the equivalent of a basement auditorium. We constantly, here in our neo-Gothic School of Higher Learning, have to pump water out of the lower part. And every now and then we have snakes. So come on down. What? Come on down, guys. It's actually a really good education in a very confusing setup.
In the crypts. I will also say we live in Kentucky, so like the snakes maybe go hand in hand with what we do here. So
sermon illustration just everywhere.
Yes. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I did not know that when I was there, and I'm glad I did not know that there were snakes in the lower level, the 00 level.
Come back anytime.
Okay.
Really inviting. Well, we have a couple questions for you. I would love to just have a conversation. And my first one was this. Did you, Dr. Bowler, ever imagine yourself as a seminary professor, a New York Times bestselling author? You host a brilliant podcast called Everything Happens, and you've interviewed all different sorts of people who I love, from Malcolm Gladwell to Beth Moore to Jenna Bush Hager to Stanley Hauerwas to Anthony. I just listened to that one not too long ago. That's incredible. Did you ever imagine that this is what your life was going to be like?
Well, that's such a kind question. And no, never. No, just not a... I think my only exposure to like people who are sometimes on American TV was Saturday morning programming, and mostly a show called Saved by the Bell, whose references I can now no longer repeat to students because I am middle-aged. But it is, I think the main reason though why having public or just a podcast in general is such a gift though is it gets back to the primary reason why I bet all of us went into theological education and theology more specifically is like there's no better way to be known and to know somebody. And so it creates like the ground of always the conversation I wish I was having, which is, did you inherit that belief? Did you acquire it? Did you earn it? Like, how did it hold up your life? How did it sometimes call it into question? And it lets me be so nosy with strangers. And given that I just made myself a keychain through my beautiful team that said small talk survivor. And I think it's because I'm unable to small talk that this is a life well suited to me.
Well, is this kind of a forced small talk though right now? I mean, kind of like to some extent.
Not until I start asking you really awkward questions, and then we'll get into it.
Cool. That'll be fun.
Yeah. Well, I just so appreciate, I reference your book and your podcast. It's like in all of my pastoral care. So we're both local church pastors, ordained in the United Methodist Church. Like we're doing that thing and living that life that we dreamed of and planned to do when we were at Duke. And I can't tell you the number of times that I referenced. Actually, last week, I sent someone a copy of Everything Happens. And I said, we're going to read this together because of what you're going through right now. We're going to talk about it. So it
is my number one most gifted book.
It is.
That I give to people because it is just so pertinent and helpful in the humor. I mean, yes, that is my pastoral care book of choice that I give to people all the time.
I don't have your book of blessings yet, but I pretty much stalk you on social media and use a lot of them that you post there. And so it's so real and it's so honest about our lived life experience and it runs up so counter to a lot of the messages that we might have inherited from church and from cultural Christianity and from these expectations. So many people now, that's how they hear of you. It's from that work in your podcast and a lot of your story. But when Rob and I still think of you, we think of you as our professor and the church historian. And so the first sort of deeper question that we wanted to ask you kind of related to that and sort of a historical perspective of it's really popular right now to talk about sort of the de-churching of America. And you always see those headlines and it's, scary, especially for maybe older generations in our church, kind of what's going on right now in our cultural context. And I'm just wondering if you think that history can teach us or what can history teach us about this particular cultural moment that we're in right now?
Yeah.
And do you think any of those historical perspectives might be helpful for us kind of to bring into our leadership, into the pulpit, as we're trying to help spiritually guide people through this sort of changing tide?
Oh, yeah. Well, and I guess that's why the great gift of knowing pastors like you is you really sit at that intersection between serving an actual community. You have people's faces and names like in your minds and hearts when you think about why it matters that God breaks into our life at all. And simultaneously, you are leading people in a cultural context in which the inherent power of Christianity has faded for so many reasons we have earned, and yet people need truth and love more than ever. And it is a weird. I know too, especially in the United Methodist context, we remain one of the only remaining big tent experiments in loving across algorithms. We are trying. It has not been fun.
It's hard.
But I think one of the things we can see over, say, like a 300-year stretch of history is, rates of churchedness really do go up and down. And sometimes I think maybe when we have in our minds really only a historical memory that goes to our parents and our grandparents, we have lived through parents and grandparents in a highly churched time that has since seen, well, really the spirituality of boomers take over. And then that is only now, the most of the theological trends we have now, including manifesting, is all just the 70s vomiting all over our, Target line T-shirts. So I think we're seeing really just the fruits of the 70s over and over again, but only in our sort of extended memory, we have a time of high church participation to now, which feels scary. And unless we remember that, right after the Civil War, almost nobody went to church. And it's not just because it was, people had, much like after the pandemic, had really gotten used to not going to church. There was very little social, spiritual cohesion. We saw in the colonial era, like a high watermark of social conformity and theological intensity with the Puritans. And then, 80 years later, people are like, what? Who? No, that's all right. We're fine. We live in Philadelphia. So I think we see all kinds of ups and downs. And that's the history of revivalism, is that during times of spiritual fallowness, a new thing often needs to kind of clear the brush and rise up. So I guess that's why I love being around pastors, is they're always looking at a smoky field and saying, all right, what's going to grow?
Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes it's like you have to be half crazy to go into this line of work, right? Some days that's what it feels like. And so I almost hear you articulating this sort of like foolish hopefulness of us that we're like, okay, yeah, let's see if we can do something new here. Let's see if, and really we started this podcast because we're two local church pastors here in the trenches. And we know that, especially in the moment of the United Methodist Church right now, we're feeling down, right? We're feeling discouraged. In Kentucky, we've lost almost half of our churches to disaffiliation, and more are expected. You hear people say, we're just going to wait till after General Conference and then talk about it. And so it's, my kids are fourth generation United Methodist on three sides of our family still living. And so it's very much split apart families and split apart friends that are like family. And so there's just this moment of, even though we're trying to look beyond it and say, okay, disaffiliations are over. Now let's, we're still sitting among the rubble, it feels like, especially here in Kentucky right now. And so, kind of what we imagined. I remember sitting at Duke and going to deacons at Duke when I was trying to discern, do I want to be a deacon or elder? What's going on here? And I remember I had friends in class that were like, we're just going to wait and see how this whole thing goes before we go through with ordination. And that was 10 years ago, right? And it's like, we can't wait. People need, like you said, the truth, and they need love, and they need community and connection and belonging and all the things that we love about Jesus and following the ways of Jesus and we love about the church. it's just, we're kind of in this stuck maybe place, this slump.
Yes.
What we thought our lives were going to look like maybe 10 years into parish ministry is not how they've played out. Yeah. And so I'm just wondering you kind of have already answered it, but kind of specifically to the moment we're in as United Methodist Church, like what word of encouragement or hope could you give to us and our fellow colleagues kind of in the trenches right now?
Yeah, all lovies. And it breaks to, of course, as you know, like not just theologically and sometimes not even theologically when you've been placed in the middle of culture wars in which the church as a trusted institution is no longer a trusted institution. Your job as clerics that doesn't have the natural authority that it once had. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I've been really interested in is how much more sort of spiritual value people place on their therapist than their pastor. And these are different kinds of training. But ours is lovely and good, and you've earned the respect and expertise that I wish the culture would give back to you. And so it's a very humbling time to be a pastor in which the sort of even the earned kudos doesn't come your way. There's been a couple. I'm just thinking there's a couple historical moments in which that works to your advantage. I just mostly because I'm thinking right now in this time of great horizontalness where spiritual authority is not considered terribly special and often in popular culture pitted against science or reduced to fanaticism. But I think one of the things that constantly encourages me is that we have words and categories that have tremendous power because they've been refined, deepened and refined over centuries. Like what people think, for instance, of we're going to turn around and do New Year's resolutions in 2 seconds and everybody wants to get better. Well, we actually have a word for that, like the richest kind of word, which is sanctification. That desire we see in other people to grow closer to God and to an account of themselves. And I think sometimes when nobody knows what we do, they don't nobody knows what United Methodist is anymore in popular culture. No one really knows exactly what a pastor does. No one thinks it's not going to be popular depictions of us being cool. It's gone. But sometimes in a time of not knowing, we can define ourselves by the richness of our words because we do actually have language. And that's what I think makes you such beautiful chaplains, when you step into people's pain, when you say, oh, let's read this book together, and actually you will be able to say things no one else says. And I guess I just find that endlessly beautiful to be around you all, is you're having the conversation people are going to want to be a part of. And that's what will always shine bright, I think. That's what makes us not reducible to our, confetti churches or whether we look all that great on the outside is. I think we're going to be the place that wants to have the real conversation that holds up people's lives.
Yeah. I think it's that's good. I think it's such a delicate balance too, there's this reclaiming of who we are as pastors, as clergy, as historians even. What ways can we bring that beauty back into the world and really seeking the beauty that's already there in the world? But how do we not be, the hey, let's keep Christ in Christmas? It's that's not the reclaiming we really need, right? Kind of abrasive with it.
You're saying that too, I know, because my dad's the world's historian of Christmas, and so all I do is have to talk about Christmas wars. But I think that's exactly right, is we have to decide that we are not culture warriors. That this is not going to break on us and our ministries, that we are going to be. It's funny, when I was trying to figure out what's my little intervention into the world, and I realized that the first thing I wanted to do was figure out tone, and I realized the tone was kind, smart, funny. Funny, I mean, good luck to preciousness. It'll be naturally offensive. But we really are very kind-hearted, and we are really smart. And so, like, we're readers, we're like everyday scholars. We want to give people like the meat, and not just the sort of let them sort of sip the cream and then run away to other yoga studios. So I guess, like, sometimes when I decide we are not culture warriors, I go back to tone. Is the truth of what I'm saying kind, smart, and funny? If I can stay in a certain spiritual posture, I find I can skip a lot of the like unnecessariness of the kind of person other people want me to be, and just like it gets to like a vocational refresh for me.
Ooh, like that
Yes.
vocational refresh.
Well, and I love how you said of what other people expect me to be, because when you said we're not supposed to be cultural warriors, right? Cultural warriors, it's almost like through the times that we've lived through with the pandemic and the presidential election and the, we're located in Louisville, Kentucky. And so Black Lives Matter with Breonna Taylor, I mean, that was here. Right? That was here that these demonstrations were happening. And it was like people were looking to us, and it felt like you had this pressure of like, you got to pick a side. Yeah. You got to join the fight. You got to say what's true and right. And it was exhausting, right? Of like, I heard someone like, my vocational reset has been reminding yourself, Rachel, you're supposed to be their spiritual guide through this. Like, you can't fix it. You can't, always be on the winning side. And so I just really appreciate that reminder of who are you, your vocational reset, and not giving into the pressure and expectation of other people expect you to be.
Yeah.
Because it's often in your family as the family pastor. It's often answering these questions. It's often, the face is looking at you when you're standing behind the pulpit that you love.
Yeah.
You love these people.
Yeah.
And you know that they're scared, and you know that they're in pain, and you want to make it go away, So that instinct can kind of kick in, which is another place that your words are always so helpful of like, everything happens, and two things can be true at the same time. We can be grateful and sad and grief-stricken and grateful for what remains. It's like, I probably quote you a lot.
That's so nice. I think it's so hard for a pastor has to live through so many kinds of time, and each requires sort of a different theological toolkit, right? Like a time of undoing, when like great evil is exposed, like that has an apocalyptic tenor, right? And we have resources in the Christian tradition to understand justice, the great leveling of evil and institutional and otherwise, like, but we also have, and then we have tragic time. We have the ability to enter into people's hospital rooms and bedsides and long walks and crying under the bleachers feelings and say, like, there's a God who loves us, especially when we are brokenhearted. And then the rest is the stuff you guys have to do, which I don't have to do as much, but that's ordinary time. And holy crap, you just have to run the whole year. So you're having to be so many kinds of people as the culture demands that you sort of perfectly pour yourself into one mold. And the length, like the breadth of your vocation means you're going to have to be all kinds of different ones. But I really do believe that right now especially the Methodists, to be honest, but like and the main line, like is not only to be people who read the news in a sad voice. We are not just culture warriors. We are not just responders. We have our own language, and that language is universal and transcendent. And thank God we're fluent in it.
Gosh, I love that. Yeah. What a good permission giving that was from you. Thank you. Because I think sometimes us pastors, especially those who are preaching the pulpit every week, who are walking with people during great sadness and then great joy in the same day, we need that permission sometimes to say, hey, you don't need to fight the culture, but live into who you are.
Yeah, that's
right. And I love that. That's such a gift. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
I guess that is kind of, when I talk about you guys, I always think of the same thing. I always think of, because I do pastor's school every year, and so I get to see students and their beautiful faces and hear about their ministries. And I just think the surrealness of your jobs it's really special to me. It's to hear somebody have to interpret scripture and tell a powerful truth and baptize a baby. And then when I call a pastor, they're always like power washing somebody's driveway or having some moment usually of like great humiliation. And I guess I really like that because it's like the ultimate high-low job. You're like, I'm really fancy. Nobody thinks I'm fancy at all.
Every day is different. Every day is different.
It's really, if you don't mind me saying this on your podcast, it's really badass. I really think it is.
Yeah. Thank you.
I want to put that now on my illuminated sign.
You
right
said
here.
the truth that needs to be a neon.
That can be
We're
it.
pastors,
I love that. What hope do you have for the future of the church? So as you look at kind of history and particularly American Christianity too, I mean, what hope do you have on the, and I'm trying to be hesitant to say on the other side of this, whatever the other side of this thing
There's
is,
no other side.
right?
Yeah.
We're just in it. What do you hope for on that kind of future?
Well, I think every culture is asking a question that Christianity has an answer for, but the question will always change. And right now, it's really still in the grips of a form of civil religion. Is our faith the same thing as being a city on a hill? Is it the same thing as being individualistic hustle monsters, if on one side, or sort of? I guess like I'm trying to think of I don't want to use any like cultural reference points because I always hate, but we want to fall into a well of a certain kind of America first. And I guess I do think that we'll continue to see Christianity lose cultural power, especially on the left. Center left will lose most of it. On the right, it will probably stay pretty steady. I mean, I'm just looking at mega church trends, and it's not increasing, but it's been relatively stable even after the pandemic. But what I do think is that we're going to find our voice without assuming that somebody in the New York Times is going to do it for us. Like, I love watching our culture of makers. Like, this podcast is a perfect example. Like, when we turned back into making our own lovely things, then I think we're on solid ground again. We're not waiting for somebody else to tell us who we are or even really care. I mean, and if they don't care, fine. We're experimenting right now. But like, I really love seeing us return to our own music, making, creativity, preaching, teaching, writing, and getting our voice back, because people stop paying attention, and that I find is always the best time for experimentation. We have something to say. We need a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. What do we have to lose?
At this point, it's like, I appreciate you saying like these trends and this has happened before and these ebbs and flows. Like, okay, that just is how it is. Expect, Jesus said something like that. Expect there to be trouble, but don't fear. I'll be with you. So it's like, let's just, okay, that's going to happen. You just do you. You just share the gospel. You just keep loving your people and keep, that universal language you're talking about. Of truth and encouragement and love from a God that is love, and it'll be okay.
And it is okay, really, to grieve the loss of the expected pastoral identity. I mean, that's that beautiful Brooks Holyfield book about the history of the pastorate, and I wish I could just read another 50 years of it, because I mean, we did expect to be cosmopolitans that people listen to. We did expect to have dental plans forever. Like, we did expect for this to be a kind of like doctor, lawyer, pastor, and that is no longer the case, and there is a grief in that, especially if we planned on being fancy. So there's like a undoing, and that gets a minute. But then I do think we get to go back into saying, but we have trained long for this good work, and we are well equipped to do it. We really are.
Yeah.
That's so good. That's so good. Yeah. I'm going to switch gears a little bit. Just talk about you now a little bit. So what is the most enjoyable part of your work right now? What is bringing you life as a part of this?
The job is weird because everything happens. Project has like a podcast, and it has my book writing, and it has a lot of speaking, but it also has this arm that just does resources for pastors. And so we make this Advent and Lent guide every year. And so right now, like an office over, it just looks like Christmas exploded because my totally beautiful team has been working on these like free Advent resources, and people are just starting to use it. So I don't know, because that was one of my theories, was that pastors are going to be more and more time poor as they have to absorb more community and cultural responsibility. And so, but we need them to have the kind, smart, funny thing, because they need to feel refreshed and at the center of an important thought life that keeps going. So anyway, right now is Advent, and every time we get all the mail from like group guides and people doing it by themselves. People don't have to know what it is to love it. And that's what gets me back to that feeling of, they don't have to know our rhythms, but the flow of it is beautiful. And seeing people kind of get introduced to that, and then I get to live in it with them, it makes everything feel new again. It really does.
Love that. What's the most challenging part?
Paperwork. I do a lot of paperwork. I have too many hats because I'm also a professor and also a faculty member and also like a participant in the marketplace. So sometimes it's mostly like reporting. Every time someone asks me where that PDF is, it's gone. It's gone. I'm sorry.
Is that the worst question to be asked?
No, it's just like, I think I pressed the archive button and I don't know where that goes. So
That's awesome.
Can you tell us what you're teaching this semester?
Oh, this is my very first sabbatical, actually, since being sick. So am I still going to faculty meetings? I am. But it's apparently
Can't give them up.
just for fun.
I'm not sure if you're doing that whole sabbatical thing right there.
You're like, what is rest? What is?
Oh, but good for you. Good for you.
That's awesome.
Well, I know we're kind of past our time with you. We're going to end each of our episodes the same way. I think we stole this from Brene Brown. But just sort of like 5 rapid fire questions, the first thing that pops in your mind.
Sure. This is going to get exciting. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just, quick rapid fire. This is the Holy Roast part of our Holy Roast podcast. So the first question is, what are you reading right now?
I just finished a book called Uncertainty by Margaret. Yeah, doing great. I'm interviewing her in 2 seconds, so she's not going to love that. It was a great book.
Well, that's okay.
We'll link it. We'll find it. Don't worry.
It's Margaret. Margaret did it.
I'm so sorry.
You kind of already answered this, but the second question is what's keeping you alive right now? And it sounds like Advent
Christmas.
resources, maybe.
And I'm Christmasing before Advent, so screw that. Yeah. It's happening whenever I say it's happening.
You know what? Do what brings you joy. Decorate before Thanksgiving. I don't even care anymore.
Just don't tell my dad. Yeah.
Okay, what are 3 things on your nightstand right now?
Earplugs. That's an indictment on my husband.
Nice.
A book on convalescence, which I think I want to do an episode on that. I think it's going to be really good for pastors of like, when do you let yourself be sick?
Yeah.
And journal. I do a lot of journaling.
Oh, nice. Love that. Okay, what's your favorite way to unwind after a long day?
Rage. Actually, you know what? Lately, I've been powerlifting. Like, I don't know if it's powerlifting, if it's like still in the lower end of power, but I lift really heavy weights because I love to feel angry.
There you go.
I love that. If it's more than just the bar, it's powerlifting.
Thank you.
To me. So well done.
I'm working on what's called walking around strength, where I lift boxes for no reason. I'm like, I'm sorry. Is this something you need? No? Okay, never mind. Sorry about that.
That's amazing. Okay, last question. You're called up to bat. Like, imagine you're a major league player here. Called up to bat. What's your walk-up song?
Oh, I've always wanted one for teaching, and it's always Ice Cube. You can do it.
Nice.
Yes.
Thank you.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
016 is set up to do
I'd
that.
like to picture like Warren Smith, like just any of these my most esteemed colleagues, just looking so disappointed in me, but like secretly proud.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love that so much.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down with us. This has been such a joy to reconnect with you and to hear more about what you're doing now. And as your former students, you don't need this, but we can say anyways, we're just so proud We're just so proud.
Really nice. That feels great. Thanks, guys. Well, blessings on your ministry. Honestly, I really am proud of you. I like when people say like, "What is the best part?" I'm like, "Oh, it's definitely pastors. Like, you should see what they do. It's ridiculous." So, well done.
Well, thank you. Thanks for your help. You help us a lot. Thank you.